Let me adjust my toys. I don't want to cover them all up. There, you can have fun. Hello. Hello. Oh, I forgot one. So, I was looking through my stuffed animals. I'm going to talk for a bit. But I was looking through my stuffed animals and I forgot. I got this lovely child at a Salvation Army. And he could be an elephant. But he also could be a mouse with an elephant nose and elephant ears. And I'm not quite sure which one it is. So this is my friend, and he will be another addition to my many stuffed animals. One of these days, I'm going to pull all of my stuffed animals. One of these days, I'm going to pull all of my stuffed animals from my room, and they will all join me in the stream. But for now, I'll just stick with these few. I don't want to cover up this one. So you're promoted, I suppose. Is that better? Yeah, that's better. Okay. How's everyone doing? I'm gonna move this just a little bit. Okay. We're gonna return to Princess Bride. I'm considering getting background music to play in the background. That's like the calming fall asleep music. But then I realized last time I tried to play music in the background of one of my streams, it didn't go very well. And you couldn't hear the music. So I'm gonna just wait. I'm seriously, I'm trying to figure out how to theory. I'm gonna wait till I figure out how to get it to work. So last we checked in, last frog stream be like. Last we read, it was we reached the tops of the cliffs of insanity, and we were going through Inigo's tragic backstory. He is an anime character now, and I'm sorry if this disappoints you, but this is reality. Inigo's an anime character now. Hello to Instagram. Hello to YouTube. Okay. It seems we have about as many friends tonight as we're going to have, so I will begin reading. We ended with okay. So Inigo had just finished the fight with the nobleman who killed his dad. Inigo slept. I already messed it up. The bleeding stopped after a day, and the pain stopped after a week. They buried Domingo, and for the first and last time, Inigo left Arabella, his face bandaged. He rode in Yeste's carriage to Madrid, where he lived in Yeste's house, obeyed Yeste's commands. After a month, the bandages were removed, but the scars were still deep red. Eventually, they softened some, but they always remained the chief features of Inigo's face, the giant parallel scars running one on each side from temple to chin. For 2 years, Yeste cared for him. Then one morning Inigo was gone. In his place were 3 words, "I must learn," on a note pinned to his pillow. Learn? Learn what? What existed beyond Madrid that the child had to commit to memory? Yeste shrugged and sighed. It was beyond him. There was no understanding children anymore. Everything was changing too fast, and the young were different. Beyond him. Life was beyond him. The world was beyond him. You name it, it was beyond him. He was a fat man who made swords. That much he knew. So he made more swords, and he grew fatter, and the years went by. As his figure spread, so did his fame. From all across the world they came, begging him for weapons. So he doubled his prices because he didn't want to work too hard anymore. He was getting old. But when he doubled his prices, when the news spread from duke to prince to king, they only wanted him the more desperately. Now the wait was 2 years for a sword, and the lineup of royalty was unending, and Yeste was growing tired. So he doubled his prices again. And when that didn't stop them, he decided to triple his already doubled and redoubled prices, and besides that, all the work had to be paid for in jewels in advance, and the wait was up to 3 years. But nothing would stop them. They had to have swords by Yeste or nothing, and even though the work on the finest was nowhere what it once was, Domingo, after all, no longer could save him. The silly rich men didn't notice. All they wanted was his weapons, and they fell over each other with jewels for him. Yeste grew very rich and very heavy. Every part of his body sagged. He had the only fat thumbs in Madrid. Dressing took an hour, breakfast the same. Everything went slowly. But he could still make swords, and people still craved them. "I'm sorry," he said to the young Spaniard who entered his shop one particular morning. "The wait is up to 4 years, and even I am embarrassed to mention the price. Have your weapon made by another." "I have my weapon," the Spaniard said, and he threw the six-fingered sword across Yeste's workbench. Such embraces! "Never leave again," Yeste said. "I eat too much when I'm lonely." "I cannot stay," Inigo told him. "I'm only here to ask you one question. As you know, I've spent the last 10 years learning. Now I have come for you to tell me if I'm ready." "Ready? Ready for what? What in the world have you been learning?" "The sword." "Madness," said Yeste. "You have spent 10 entire years just learning to fence?" "No, not just learning to fence," Inigo answered. "I did many other things as well." "Tell me." "Well," Inigo began, 10 years is what? About 3,600 days. And that's about, I figured this out once, so I remember it pretty well, about 86,000 hours. Well, I always made it a point to get 4 hours sleep per night. That's 14,000 hours right here, leaving me perhaps 72,000 hours to account for. You slept, I'm with you. What else? Well, I squeezed rocks. I'm sorry. My hearing sometimes fails me. It sounded like you said you squeezed rocks? To make my wrist strong so I could control the sword. Rocks, like apples, that size. I would squeeze them in each hand for perhaps 2 hours a day. And I would spend another 2 hours a day in skipping and dodging and moving quickly, so that my feet would be able to get me into position and deliver properly the thrust of the sword. That's another 14,000 hours. I'm down to 58,000 now. Well, I always sprinted 2 hours each day as fast as I could, so my legs, as well as being quick, would also be strong, and that gets me down to about 50,000 hours. Yeste examined the young man before him. Blade thin, 6 feet in height, straight as a sapling, bright-eyed, taut. Even motionless he seemed to whip it quick. "And these last 50,000 hours, these have been spent studying the sword?" Inigo nodded. "Where?" "Wherever I could find a master. Venice, Bruges, Budapest. I could have taught you here." "True, but you care for me. You would not have been ruthless. You would have said, 'Excellent parry, Inigo. Now that's enough for one day. Let's have supper.'" "That does sound like me," Yeste admitted. "But why was it so important? Why was it worth so much of your life?" "Because I could not fail him again." "Fail who?" "My father. I've spent all these years preparing to find the six-fingered man and kill him in a duel. But he is a master, Yeste. He said as much, and I saw the way his sword flew at Domingo. I must not lose that duel when I find him. So now I have come to you. You know swords and swordsmen. You must not lie. Am I ready? If you say I am, I will seek him through the world. If you say no, I will spend another 10 years, and another 10 after that, if that is needed." So they went to Yeste's courtyard. It was late morning, hot. Yeste put his body in a chair, and the chair in the shade. Inigo stood waiting in the sunshine. "We need not test desire, and we know you have sufficient motive to deliver the death blow," Yeste said. Therefore, we only need to prove your knowledge and speed and stamina. We need no enemy for this. The enemy is always in the mind. Visualize him. Inigo drew his sword. The six-fingered man taunts you, Yeste called. Do what you can. Inigo began to leap around the courtyard, the great blade flashing. He uses the Agrippa defense, Yeste shouted. Immediately, Inigo shifted position, increased the speed of his sword. Now, he surprises you with Bonetti's attack. But Inigo was not surprised for long. Again, his feet shifted. He moved his body a different way. Perspiration was pouring down his thin frame now, and the great blade was blinding. Yeste continued to shout. Inigo continued to shift. The blade never stopped. At 3 p.m, Yeste said, Enough. I am exhausted from the watching. Inigo sheathed the six-fingered sword and said, and waited. You wish to know if I feel you are ready to duel the death man ruthless enough. You wish to know if I feel you are ready to duel to the death, a man ruthless enough to kill your father, rich enough to buy protection, older and more experienced, and an acknowledged master. Inigo nodded. I'll tell you the truth, and it's up to you to live with it. First, there has never been a master as young as you. 30 years at least before that rank has yet been reached, and you are barely 22. Well, the truth is you are an impetuous boy driven by madness, and you are not now, and you will never be a master. Thank you for your honesty, Inigo said. I must tell you I had hoped for better news. I find it very hard to speak just now, so if you'll please excuse me, I'll be on my... I had not finished, Yeste said. What else is there to say? I loved your father very dearly, that you know. But this you did not know. When we were very young, not yet 20, we saw with our own eyes an exhibition for the Corsican wizard Bastia. I know of no wizards. It is the rank beyond master in swordsmanship, Yeste said. Bastia was the last man so designated. Long before your birth he died at sea. There have been no wizard since, and you would never in this world have beaten him. But I tell you this, he would never in this world have beaten you. Inigo stood silent for a long time. Remembered, Alex, I know I'm late on that one, but still. Inigo stood silent for a long time. I am ready then. I would not enjoy being the six-fingered man, was all Yeste replied. The next morning, Inigo began the track down. He had it all carefully prepared in his mind. He would find the six-fingered man. He would go up to him. He would say simply, Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. And then, oh then, the duel. It was a lovely plan, really, simple, direct, no frills. In the beginning, Inigo had all kinds of wild vengeance notions, but gradually, simplicity had seemed the better way. Originally, he had all kinds of little plays worked out in his mind. The enemy would weep and beg. The enemy would cringe and cry. The enemy would bribe and slobber and act in every way unmanly. But eventually these two gave way in his mind to simplicity. The enemy would simply say, Oh yes, I remember killing him. I'll only be too delighted to kill you too. Inigo had only one problem. He could not find the enemy. It had never occurred to him there would be the least difficulty. After all, how many noblemen were there with 6 fingers on the right hands? Surely it would not be the talk of whatever his vicinity happened to be. A few questions. Pardon me, I'm not crazy. But have you seen any 6-fingered noblemen lately? And surely sooner or later there would be an answering yes. But it didn't come sooner. And later wasn't the kind of thing you wanted to hold under your breath for either. The first month wasn't all that discouraging. Inigo crisscrossed Spain and Portugal. The second month he moved to France and spent the rest of the year there. The year following, that was his Italian year, and then came Germany and the whole of Switzerland. It was only after 5 solid years of failure that he began to worry. By then, he had seen all of the Balkans and most of Scandinavia, and had visited the Florinese and the natives of Gilder, and into Mother Russia, and down step by step around the entire Mediterranean. But then he knew what happened. 10 years learning was 10 years too long, or much had been allowed to happen, or too much had been allowed to happen. The six-fingered man was probably crusading in Asia, or getting rich in America, or a hermit in the East Indies, or dead? Inigo, at the age of 27, began having a few extra glasses of wine at night to help him get to sleep. At 28, he was having a few extra glasses to help him digest his lunch. At 29, the wine was essential to wake him in the morning. His world was collapsing around him. Not only was he living in daily failure, something almost as dreadful was beginning to happen. Fencing was beginning to bore him. He was simply too good. He would make his living during his travels by finding the local champion wherever he happened to be, and they would duel. And Inigo would disarm him and accept whatever they happened to bet. And with his winnings, he would pay for his food and his lodging and his wine. But the local champions were nothing. Even in the big cities, the local experts were nothing. Even in the capital cities, the local masters were nothing. There was no competition, nothing to help him keep an edge. His life began to seem pointless, his quest pointless. Everything, without reason. At 30, he gave up the ghost. He stopped his search, forgot to eat, slept only on occasion. He had his wine for company, and that was enough. He was a shell. The greatest fencing machine since the Corsican wizard was barely even practicing the sword. He was in that condition when the Sicilian found him. At first the little hunchback only supplied him with stronger wine, but then, through a combination of praise and nudging, the Sicilian began to get him off the Sicilian had a dream. With his skill plus the Turk's strength, plus the Spaniard's sword, they might become the most effective criminal organization in the civilized world, which is precisely what they become. In dark places, their names whipped sharper than fear. Everyone had needs that were harder to fulfill. The Sicilian crowd, 2 was company, 3 was a crowd, even then, became more and more famous, and more rich. Nothing was beyond or beneath them. Inigo's blade was flashing again, more than ever like lightning. The Turk's strength grew, more prodigious within the months. But the hunchback was the leader. There was never doubt. Without him, Inigo knew where he would be. On his back, begging wine in some alley entrance. The Sicilian sword was not just law, it was gospel. So when he said, "Kill the man in black," all other possibilities ceased to exist. The man in black had to die. Inigo paced the edge of the cliff, fingers snapping. 50 feet below him now, the man in black still climbed. Inigo's impatience was beginning to double beyond control. He stared down at the slow progress. Find a crevice, jam in the hand. Find another crevice, jam in the other hand. 48 feet to go. Inigo slapped his sword handle, and his finger snapping began to go faster. He examined the hooded climber, half hoping he would be six-fingered, but no. This one had the proper accompaniment of digits. 47 feet to go now. Now 46. "Hello there!" Inigo hollered when he could wait no more. The man in black glanced up and grunted. "I've been watching you." The man in black nodded. "Slow going," Inigo said. "Look, I don't mean to be rude," the man in black said finally. But I'm rather busy just now, so try not to distract me. I'm sorry, Inigo said. The man in black grunted again. I don't suppose you could speed things up. If you want to speed things up so much, the man in black says, clearly quite angry now, you could lower a rope or a tree branch or find some other helpful thing to do. I could do that, Inigo agreed, but I don't think you would accept my help, since I am only waiting up here so that I can kill you. That does put a damper on our relationship, the man in black said then. I'm afraid you'll just have to wait. 43 feet left. 41. I could give you my word as a Spaniard, Inigo said. No good, the man in black says. I've known too many Spaniards. I'm going crazy up here, Inigo said. Any time you want to change places, I'd be too happy to accept. 39 feet. And resting. The man in black just hung in space, feet dangling, the entire weight of his body supported by the strength of his hand jammed into the crevice. Come along now, Inigo pleaded. It's been a bit of a climb, the man in black explained, and I'm weary. I'll be fine in a quarter hour or so. Another quarter hour? Inconceivable. Look, we've got an extra piece of rope up here. We didn't need when we made our original climb. I'll just drop it down to you and you'll grab hold and I'll pull and… No good, the man repeated. You might pull, but then again, you also just might let go, which, since you're in a hurry to kill me, would certainly do the job quickly. But you wouldn't have ever known I was going to kill you if I hadn't been the one to tell you. Doesn't that let you know I can be trusted? Frankly, and I hope you won't be insulted. No. There's no way you'll trust me? Nothing comes to mind. Suddenly, Inigo raised his right hand high. I swear on the soul of Domingo Montoya, you will reach the top alive. The man in black was silent for a long time. Then he looked up. I do not know this Domingo of yours, but something in your tone says I must believe you. Throw me the rope. Inigo quickly tied it around a rock, dropped it over. The man in black grabbed hold, hung suspended alone in space. Inigo pulled. In a moment, the man in black was beside him. Thank you, the man in black says, and he sank down on the rock. Inigo sat alongside him. We'll wait until you're ready, he said. The man in black breathed deeply. Again, thank you. Why have you followed us? You carry baggage of much value. We have no intention of selling, Inigo said. That is your business. And yours? The man in black made no reply. Inigo stood and walked away, surveying the terrain over which they would battle. It was a splendid plateau, really, filled with trees for dodging around and roots for tripping over and small rocks for losing your balance on and boulders for leaping off, and if you could climb on them fast enough, bathing everything, the entire spot, moonlight. One could not ask for a more suitable testing ground for a duel. Inigo decided it had everything, including the marvelous cliffs at one end, beyond which was the wonderful 1,000-foot drop. Always something to bear in mind when one was planning tactics. It was perfect. The place was perfect. Provided the man in black could fence. Really fence. Inigo did then what he always did before a duel. He took the great sword from its scabbard and touched the side of the blade to his face 2 times. Once along one scar, once along the other. I have a picture to show you guys. So first I'll be starting with Instagram. Here they are, lighting in the moonlight. On YouTube can already see, but I'll hold it up to you guys. There you go. Gonna grab some water. Oh, you can see my mic today. Not you, Instagram, you, YouTube. Okay. Then he examined the man in black. Fine sailor, yes. A mighty climber? No. Question. Courageous? I'm stupid. I'm redoing that one. Then he examined the man in black. Fine sailor, yes. A mighty climber, no question. Courageous, without a doubt. But could he fence? Really fence? Please, Inigo thought. It has been so long since I have been tested. Let this man test me. Let him be a glorious swordsman. Let him be both quick and fast, smart and strong. Give him a matchless mind for tactics, a background the equal of mine. Please, please, it's been so long. Let him be a master. I have my breath back now, the man in black said from the rock. Thank you for allowing me my rest. We'd best get on with it then, Inigo replied. The man in black stood. You seem a decent fellow, Inigo said. I hate to kill you. You seem a decent fellow, answered the man in black. I hate to die. But one of us must, Inigo said. Begin. And so saying, he took the six-fingered sword and put it into his left hand. He had begun all his duels left-handed lately. It was good practice for him, and although he was the only living wizard in the world with his regular hand, the right, still, he was more than worthy with his left. Perhaps 30 men alive were his equal when he used his left. Perhaps as many as 50, perhaps as few as 10. The man in black was also left-handed, and that warmed Inigo. It made things fairer. His weakness against the other man's strength. All to the good. They touched swords, and the man in black immediately began the Agrippa defense, which Inigo felt was sound. Considering the rocky terrain for the Agrippa, kept the feet stationary at first, and made the chances of slipping minimal. Naturally, he countered with the capo ferro, which surprised the man in black, but he defended well, quickly shifting out of the Agrippa and taking the attack himself, using the principles of Thibault. Inigo had to smile. No one had taken the attack against him in so long, and it was thrilling. He let the man in black advance, let him build up courage, retreating gracefully between some trees, letting his Benetti defense keep him safe from harm. Then his legs flicked, and he was behind the nearest tree, and the man in black had not expected it, and was slow reacting. Inigo flashed immediately out from the tree, attacking himself now, and the man in black retreated, stumbled, got his balance, continued moving away. Inigo was impressed with the quickness of the balance return. Most men the size of the man in black would have gone down or, at the least, fallen to one hand. The man in black did neither. He simply quick-stepped, wrenched his body erect, continued fighting. They were moving parallel to a group of large boulders, for Inigo was anxious to see how well he moved when the quarters were close, when you could not thrust or parry with total freedom. He continued to force, and when the boulders were surrounding them, Inigo suddenly threw his body against a nearby rock, rebounded off it with stunning force, lunged with incredible speed. First blood was his. He had pinked the man in black, grazed him only along the left wrist. A scratch was all, but it was bleeding. Immediately the man in black hurried his retreat, getting his position away from the boulders, getting out into the open of the plateau. Inigo followed, not bothering to try to check on the other man's flight. There would always be time for that later. Then the man in black launched his greatest assault. It came with no warning, and the speed and strength of it were terrifying. His blade flashed in the light again, and at first, Inigo was only too delighted to retreat. He was not entirely familiar with this style of attack. It was mostly McBone, but there were snatches of capo ferro thrown in, and he continued moving backward while he concentrated on the enemy, figuring the best way to stop the assault. The man in black kept advancing, and Inigo was aware that behind him now he was coming closer and closer to the edge of the cliffs. But that could not have concerned him less. The important thing was to outthink the enemy, find his weakness, let him have his moment of exultation. Suddenly, as the cliffs came ever nearer, Inigo realized the fault in the attack that was flashing at him. A simple Thibault maneuver would destroy it entirely, but he didn't want to give it away so soon. Let the other man have the triumph a moment longer. Life allowed so few. The cliffs were very close behind him now. Inigo continued to retreat. The man in black continued advancing. Then Inigo countered with the Thibault, and the man in black blocked it. He blocked it! Inigo repeated the Thibault move again, and it didn't work. He switched to Capoferro, he tried Bonetti, he went to Fabri. In desperation, he began a move used only twice by Sanct. Nothing worked. The man in black kept attacking, and the cliffs were almost there. Inigo never panicked, never came close, but he decided some things very quickly because there was no time for long consultations. And what he decided was that although the man in black was slow in reacting to moves behind trees, not that good at all amidst boulders, when movement was restricted, yet out in the open, where there was space, he was a terror. A left-handed, black-masked terror. "You are most excellent," he said. His rear foot was at the edge of the cliffs. He could retreat no more. "Thank you," the man in black replied. "I have worked very hard to become so." "You are better than I am," Inigo admitted. "So it seems. But if that is true, then why are you smiling?" "Because," Inigo answered, "I know something you don't know." "And what is that?" asked the man in black. "I'm not left-handed," Inigo replied, and with those words he all but threw the six-fingered sword into his right hand, and the tide of the battle turned. The man in black retreated before the slashing of the great sword. He tried to sidestep, tried to parry, tried to somehow escape the doom that was now inevitable. But there was no way. He could block 50 thrusts. The 51st flicked through, and now his left arm was bleeding. He could thwart 30 ripostes, but not the 31st, and now his shoulder bled. The wounds were not yet grave, but they kept on coming as they dodged across the stones, and then the man in black found himself amidst the trees, and that was bad for him. So he all but fled before Inigo's onslaught. And when he was in the open again, but Inigo kept coming. Nothing could stop him. Then the man in black was back amongst the boulders. That was even worse for him than the trees. And he shouted on in frustration and practically ran to where there was open space again, but there was no dealing with the wizard. And slowly, again, the deadly cliffs became a factor in the fight. Only now, it was the man in black who was being forced to doom. He was brave, and he was strong, and the cuts did not make him beg for mercy. He showed no fear behind his black mask. "You are amazing," he cried, as Inigo increased the already blinding speed of the blade. "Thank you. It has not come without effort." The death moment was at hand now. Again and again Inigo thrust forward, and again the man in black managed to ward off the attacks, but each time it was harder, and the strength in Inigo's wrist was endless, and he only thrust more fiercely, and soon the man in black grew weak. "You cannot tell it," he said then, "because I wear a cape and a mask, but I'm smiling now." "Why?" "Because I am not left-handed either," said the man in black. And he too switched hands, and now the battle was finally joined, and Inigo began to retreat. "Who are you?" he screamed. "No one of import, another lover of the blade." "I must know." "Get used to disappointment." They flashed along the open plateau now, and the blades were both invisible. But oh, the earth trembled, and oh, the skies shook, and Inigo was losing. He tried to make up for the trees, but the man in black would have none of it. He tried retreating to the boulders, but that was denied him too. And in the open, unthinkable as it was, the man in black was superior. Not much, but in a multitude of tiny ways, he was of a slightly higher quality, a hair quicker, a fraction stronger, a speck faster. Not really much at all. But it was enough. They met in the center plateau for the final assault. Neither man conceded anything. The sound of metal clashing metal rose. A final burst of energy through Inigo's veins. He made every attempt, tried every trick, used every ounce of every day of his years of experience, but he was blocked by the man in black. He was shackled by the man in black. He was baffled, thwarted, muzzled, beaten by the man in black. A final flick, and the great six-fingered sword went flying from his hand. Inigo stood there, helpless. Then he dropped to his knees, bowed his head, closed his eyes. "Do it quickly," he said. "May my hands fall from my wrists before I kill an artist like yourself," said the man in black. "I would as soon destroy Da Vinci. However," and here he clubbed Inigo's head with the butt of his sword, "since I can't have you following me either, please understand that I hold you in the highest respect." He struck one more time, and the Spaniard fell unconscious. The man in black quickly tied Inigo's hands around a tree and left him there, for the moment, sleeping and helpless. Then he sheathed his sword, picked up the Sicilian's trail, and raced into the night. "He has beaten Inigo," the Turk said, not quite sure he wanted to believe it, but positive that the news was sad. He liked Inigo. Inigo was the only one who wouldn't laugh when Fezzik asked him to play rhymes. They were hurrying along a mountainous path on the way to the Gilder frontier. The path was narrow and strewn with rocks like cannonballs, so the Sicilian had a terrible time keeping up. Fezzik carried Buttercup lightly on his shoulders. She was still tied hand and foot. There's a picture! I gotta show you guys the picture. No one's currently viewing on Instagram, but I still have 4 people watching on YouTube. So here we see the man in black over there and Inigo right over here. "I didn't hear you. Say it again," the Sicilian called out, so Fezzik waited for the hunchback to catch up to him. "See?" Fezzik pointed then. Far down at the very bottom of the mountain path, the man in black could be seen running. Inigo was beaten. "Inconceivable!" exploded the Sicilian. Fezzik never dared to disagree with the hunchback. "I am so stupid," Fezzik nodded. "Inigo is not lost to the man in black. He has defeated him. And to prove it, he has put on all of the man in black's clothes and masks and hoods and boots and gained 80 pounds. The Sicilian squinted down toward the running figure. "Fool," he hurled at the Turk. "After all these years, can't you tell Inigo when you see him? That isn't Inigo." "I'll never learn," the Turk agreed. "If there's ever a question about anything, you can always count on me to get it wrong." Inigo must have slipped or been tricked or otherwise unfairly beaten. That's the only conceivable explanation. Conceivable, believable, the giant thought. Only he didn't dare say it out loud. Not to the Sicilian. He might have whispered it to Inigo late at night, but that was before Inigo was dead. He also might have whispered, "Heavable, thievable, weavable," but that was as far as he got before the Sicilian started talking again. That was always meant he had to pay very strict attention. Nothing angered the hunchback as quickly as catching Fezzik's thinking. Since he barely imagined someone like Fezzik capable of thought, he never asked what was on his mind, because he couldn't have cared less. If he had found out Fezzik was making rhymes, he would have laughed, and then found new ways to make Fezzik suffer. "Untie her feet," the Sicilian commanded. Fezzik put the princess down and ripped the robes apart that bound her legs. Then he rubbed her ankles so she could walk. The Sicilian grabbed her immediately and yanked her away. "Catch up with us quickly," the Sicilian said. "Instructions?" Fezzik called out, almost panicked. He hated being left on his own like this. Finish him, the Sicilian was getting peeved. "Succeed, since Inigo failed us." "But I can't fence. I don't know how to fence." "Your way," the Sicilian could barely control himself now. "Oh, yes. Good. My way. Thank you, Vicini," Fezzik said to the hunchback. Then, summoning all his courage, I need a hint. You're always saying how you understand force, how force belongs to you. Use it, I don't care how. Wait for him behind there. He pointed to a sharp bend in the mountain path. And crush his head like an eggshell. He pointed to the cannonball-sized rocks. I could do that, yes, Fezzik nodded. He was marvelous at throwing heavy things. It just seems not very sportsmanlike, doesn't it? The Sicilian lost control. It was terrifying when he did it. With most people, they scream and holler and jump around. With Vicini, it was very different. He got very, very quiet. His voice sounded like it came from a dead throat. His eyes turned to fire. I tell you this, and I tell it once. Stop the man in black. Stop him for good and all. If you fail, there will be no excuses. I will find another giant. Please don't desert me, Fezzik said. Then do as you are told. He grabbed hold of Buttercup again and hobbled up the mountain path and out of sight. Fezzik glanced down toward the figure racing up the path toward him. Still a good distance away, time enough to practice. Fezzik picked up a rock the size of a cannonball and aimed at a crack in the mountain 30 yards away. Swoosh! Dead center. He picked up a bigger rock and threw it at the shadow line twice as distant. Not quite swoosh, 2 inches to the right. Fezzik was reasonably satisfied. 2 inches off would still crush a head if you aimed for the center. He groped around, found the perfect rock for throwing. It just fit his hand. Then he moved to the sharp turn in the path, backed off into deepest shadow. Unseen, silent. He waited patiently with his killing rock, counted the seconds, until the man in black would die. This is the Fezzik section of, I think, Chapter 5. Turkish women are famous for the size of their babies. The only happy newborn ever to weigh over 40 pounds upon entrance was the product of a southern Turkish union. Turkish hospital records list a total of 11 children who weighed over 20 pounds at birth, and 95 more who weighed at between 15 and 20. Now, all of these 106 cherubs did what babies usually do at birth. They lost 3 or 4 ounces, and it took them the better part of a week before they got it totally back. More accurately, 105 lost weight just after they were born. Not Fezzik. His first afternoon, he gained a pound, since he weighed but 15, and since his mother gave birth 2 weeks early, the doctors weren't unduly concerned. It's because you came 2 weeks too soon, they explained to Fezzik's mother. That explains it. Actually, of course, it didn't explain anything, but whenever doctors are confused about something, which is really more frequently than any of us would do well to think about, they always snatch at something in the vicinity of the case and add, that explains it. If Fezzik's mother had come late, they would have said, well, you came late. That explains it. Or, well, it was raining during delivery. This added weight is simply moisture. That explains it. A healthy baby doubles his birth weight in about 6 months and triples it in about a year. When Fezzik was a year old, he weighed 85 pounds. He wasn't fat, understand. He looked like a perfectly normal, strong 85-pound kid. Not all that normal, actually, but he was pretty hairy for a 1-year-old. A healthy baby doubles his birth. Already read that. By the time he reached kindergarten, he was ready to shave. He was the size of a normal man by this time, and all the other children made his life miserable. At first, naturally, they were scared to death. Even then, Fezzik looked fierce. But once they found out he was chicken, well, they weren't about to let an opportunity like that get away. Bully, bully, they taunted Fezzik during morning yogurt break. I'm not, Fezzik would say out loud. To himself, he would go, woolly, woolly. He would never dare to consider himself a poet, because he wasn't anything like that. He just loved rhymes. Anything you said out loud, he rhymed it inside. Sometimes the rhymes made sense, sometimes they didn't. Fezzik never cared much about sense. All that ever mattered was the sound. Coward, Toward, I'm not. Then fight, one of them would say, and would swing all he had and hit Fezzik in the stomach. confident that all Fezzik would do was go oof and stand there, because he never hit back, no matter what you did to him. Oof. Another swing. Another. A good stiff punch to the kidneys, maybe. Maybe a kick in the knee. It would go on like that until Fezzik burst into tears and ran away. One day at home, Fezzik's father called out, "Come here." Fezzik, as always, obeyed. "Dry your tears," his mother said. Two children had beaten him very badly just before. He did what he could to stop crying. "Fezzik, this can't go on," his mother said. "They must stop picking on you." Kicking on you. Kicking on you? "I don't mind so much," Fezzik said. "Well, you should mind," his father said. He was a carpenter with big hands. "Come on outside. I'm going to teach you how to fight." "Please, I don't want—" "Obey your father." They trooped out to the backyard. "Make a fist," his father said. Fezzik did his best. I have a picture to share with literally only YouTube, because no one is watching on Instagram, and that is okay. But here is young Fezzik getting bullied by the children. His father looked at his mother, then at the mother, then at the heavens. "He can't even make a fist," his father said. "He's trying. He's only 6. Don't be so hard on him." Fezzik's father cared for his son greatly, and he tried to keep his voice soft so Fezzik wouldn't burst out crying. But it wasn't easy. "Honey," Fezzik's father said, "look. When you make a fist, don't put your thumb inside your fingers. You keep your thumb outside your fingers. Because if you keep your thumb inside your fingers and you hit somebody, what will happen is you'll break your thumb. And that isn't good. Because the whole object, when you hit somebody, is to hurt the other guy, not yourself." Blurt. "I don't want to hurt anybody, Daddy." "I don't want you to hurt anybody, Fezzik. But if you know how to take care of yourself, and they know you know, they won't bother you anymore." Father. "I don't mind so much." "Well, we do," his mother said. "They shouldn't pick on you, Fezzik, just because you need a shave." "Back to the fist," his father said. "Have we learned how?" Fezzik made a fist again, this time with the thumb outside. "He's a natural learner," his mother said. She cared for him as greatly as his father did. "Now hit me," Fezzik's father said. "No, I don't want to do that." "Hit your father, Fezzik." "Maybe he doesn't know how to hit," Fezzik's father said. "Maybe not," Fezzik's mother shook her head sadly. "Watch, honey," Fezzik's father said. "See? Simple. You just make a fist like you already know, then you pull back your arm a little and aim for where you want to land and let it go." "Show your father what a natural learner you are," Fezzik's mother said. "Make a punch. Hit him a good one." Fezzik made a punch toward his father's arm. Fezzik's father stared at the heavens again in frustration. "He came close to your arm," Fezzik's mother said quickly, before his son's face could cloud. "That was very good for a start, Fezzik. Tell him what a good start he made," she said to her husband. "It was in the right general direction," Fezzik's father managed. "If only I had been standing 1 yard further west, it would have been perfect." "I'm very tired," Fezzik said. "When you learn so much so fast, you get so tired." "I do anyway. Please may I be excused?" "Not yet," Fezzik's mother said. "Honey, please hit me. Really hit me. Try. You're a smart boy. Hit me a good one," Fezzik's father begged. "Tomorrow, Daddy. I promise." Tears began to form. "Crying's not going to work, Fezzik," his father exploded. "It's not going to work on me, and it's not going to work on your mother, and you're going to do what I say, and what I say is you're going to hit me, and if it takes all night, we're going to stand right here, and if it takes all week, we're going to stand right here, and if it— splat!" This was before emergency wards, and that was too bad, at least for Fezzik's father, because there was no place to take him after Fezzik's punch landed, except to his own bed, where he remained with his eyes shut for a day and a half, except for when the milkman came to fix his broken jaw. This was not before doctors, but in Turkey they hadn't gotten around to claiming the bone business yet. Milkmen were still in charge of bones, the logic being that since milk was so good for bones, who would know more about broken bones than a milkman? When Fezzik's father was able to open his eyes as much as he wanted, they had a family talk, the three of them. "You're very strong, Fezzik," his father said. Actually, that's not strictly true. What his father meant to say was, "You're very strong, Fezzik." What came out was more like this. Zzz, 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 zzz. Ever since the milkman had wired his jaw together, all he could manage was the letter Z. But he had a very expressive face, and his wife understood him perfectly. "He says, 'You're very strong, Fezzik.'" "I thought I was," Fezzik answered. "Last year I hit a tree once when I was very mad. I knocked it down. It was a small tree, but still, I figured that had to mean something." "He says he's giving up on being a carpenter, Fezzik." "Oh no," Fezzik said. "You'll be all well soon, Daddy. The milkman practically promised me." "He wants to give up being a carpenter, Fezzik." "But what will he do?" Fezzik's mother answered this one herself. She and her husband had been up half the night agreeing on the decision. "He is going to be your manager, Fezzik. Fighting is the national sport of Turkey. We're all going to be rich and famous." "But Mommy, Daddy, I don't like fighting." Fezzik's father reached out and gently patted his son's knee. "Zzz, zzz, zzz, zzz," he said. "It's going to be wonderful," his mother translated. Fezzik only burst into tears. They had his first professional match in the village of Sandiki on a steaming hot Sunday. Fezzik's parents had a terrible time getting him into the ring. They were absolutely confident of victory because they had worked very hard. They had taught Fezzik for 3 solid years before they mutually agreed that he was ready. Fezzik's father handled tactics and ring strategy, while his mother was more in charge of diet and training, and they have never been happier. Fezzik had never been more miserable. He was scared and frightened and terrified, all rolled into one. No matter how they reassured him, he refused to enter the arena. Because he knew something. Even though outside he looked 20, his mustache was already coming along nicely. Inside, he was still this 9-year-old who liked rhyming things. "No," he said. I won't, and you can't make me." "After all we've slaved for these 3 years," his father said. His jaw was almost as good as new now. "You'll hurt me," Fezzik said. "Life is pain," his mother says. "Anybody that says different is selling something." "Please, I'm not ready. I forget the hold. I'm not graceful and I fall down a lot. It's true." It was. Their only real fear was, were they rushing him? "When the going gets tough, the tough gets going," Fezzik's mother said. "Get going, Fezzik," his father said. Fezzik stood his ground. "Listen, we're not going to threaten you," Fezzik's parents said more or less together. "All we care for each other too much. Oh my gosh, we all care for each other too much to pull out any of that stuff. If you don't want to fight, nobody's going to force you. We'll just leave you alone forever." Fezzik's picture of hell was being alone forever. He had told them that when he was 5. They marched into the arena then to face the champion of Sandiki, who had been the champion for 11 years since he was 24. He was very graceful and wide and stood 6 feet in height, only half a foot less than Fezzik. Fezzik didn't stand a chance. He was too clumsy. Kept falling down or getting his hold on backwards so they weren't holds at all. The champion of Sindiki toyed with him. Fezzik kept getting thrown down, or falling down, or tumbling down, or stumbling down. He always got up and tried again, but the champion of Sindiki was much too fast for him and too clever, and much, much too experienced. Crowd laughed, ate baklava, and enjoyed the whole spectacle. until Fezzik got his arms around the champion of Sandiki. The crowd grew very quiet then. Fezzik lifted him up. No noise. Fezzik squeezed and squeezed. That's enough now, Fezzik's father said. Fezzik laid the other man down. Thank you, he said. You're a wonderful fighter, and I was lucky. The ex-champion of Sandiki kind of grunted. Raise your hands, you're the winner, his mother reminded. Fezzik stood there in the middle of the ring with his hands raised. Boo, said the crowd. Animal, ape, gorilla, boo! They did not linger long in Sandiki. As a matter of fact, it wasn't very safe from then on to linger long anywhere. They fought the champion of Ispir. Boo! The champion of Simal. Boo! They fought in Bolu. They fought in Zyle. Boo! I don't care what anybody says, Fezzik's mother told him one winter afternoon. You're my son, and you're wonderful. It was gray and dark, and they were hot-footing out of Constantinople just as fast as they could, because Fezzik had just demolished their champion before most of the crowd was even seated. I'm not wonderful, Fezzik said. They're right to insult me. I'm too big. Whenever I fight, it looks like I'm picking on somebody. Maybe, Fezzik's father began a little hesitantly. Maybe, Fezzik, if you just possibly sort of lose a few fights, they might not yell at us so much. The wife whirled on the husband. The boy is 11, and you already want him to throw fights? Nothing like that. No, don't get all excited, but maybe if he'd even look like he was suffering a little, they'd let up on us. I'm suffering, Fezzik said. He was. Try to show it a little more. I'll try, Daddy. That's a good boy. I can't help being strong. It's not my fault. I don't even exercise. I think it's time to head for Greece, Fezzik's father said then. We've beaten everybody in Turkey will fight us, and athletics began in Greece. No one appreciates talent like the Greeks. I just hate it when they go boo, Fezzik said. He did. Now his private picture of hell was being left alone, with everybody going boo at him forever. They'll love you in Greece, Fezzik's mother said. They fought in Greece. Ah, was Greek for boo. Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, Czechoslovakia, Romania. Boo. They tried Asia. The jiu-jitsu champion of Korea, the karate champion of Siam, the kung fu champion of all of India. See note on R. In Mongolia, his parents died. We've done everything we can for you, Fezziks. Fezziks? There is more than one, apparently. We've done everything we can for you, Fezzik. Good luck, they said. They were gone. It was a terrible thing. Okay. It was a terrible thing, a plague that swept everything before it. Fezzik would have died too, only naturally he never got sick. Alone he continued on, across the Gobi Desert, hitching rides sometimes with passing caravans. And that's where he learned to make them stop booing. Fight groups. It all began in a caravan on the Gobi when the caravan said, I'll bet my camel drivers can take you. There were only 3 of them, so Fezzik said, fine. He'd try, and he did. He won, naturally. And I have a picture to show you guys. Something's dying. That is our kitchen clock. There's a different bird for every hour. It is 10 p.m. now, and so that was the 10 p.m. bird. I think it was a blue jay. The issue with the clock, however, is that the batteries tend to run out on the clock. And when the batteries run out, the sound gets slower and lower. So it sounds like a dying bird. Here is a picture of our lovely child Fezzik beating people naturally. The clock is dying. I fully agree with this. Let me 1 second. Do this. I'll edit that later. 1 second, just give me a moment. No one really watches on Instagram, but sometimes people pop in and then they immediately pop out. So I keep it going. Okay. It all began in a caravan in the Gobi when the caravan had said, "I'll bet my camel drivers can take you." There were only 3 of them, so Fezzik said, "Fine." He'd try, and he did, and he won, naturally. And everybody seemed happy. Fezzik was thrilled. He never fought just one person again if it was possible. For a while he traveled from place to place, battling gangs for local charities. But his business head was never much, and besides, doing things alone was even less appealing to him now that he was into his late teens than it had before. He joined a traveling circus. All the other performers grumbled at him because, they said, he was eating more than his share of the food. So he stayed pretty much to himself, except when it came to his work. But then one night, when Fezzik had just turned 20, he got a shock of his life. The booing was back again. He could not believe it. He just had squeezed half a dozen men into submission, cracked the heads of half a dozen more. What did they want from him? The truth was simply this. He had gotten too strong. He would never measure himself, but everybody whispered he must have gotten over 7 feet tall, and he would never step on a scale. But people claimed he weighed 400. Not only that, he was quick now. All the years of experience had made him almost inhuman. He knew all of the tricks, could counter all of the holds. Animal! Ape! Gorilla! Boo! That night, alone in his tent, Fezzik wept. He was a freak. Speak. He still loved rhymes. A two-eyed cyclops. Eye drops. Like the tears that were dropping now, dropping from his half-closed eyes. By the next morning, he had gotten control of himself. At least he still had his circus friends around him. That week the circus fired him. The crowds were booing them now, too. The fat lady threatened to walk out. The midgets were fuming that was it for Fezzik. That's a bad word. The people that were small were fuming, and that was it for Fezzik. This was in the middle of Greenland, and as everybody knows, Greenland then, as now, was the loneliest place on Earth. In Greenland, there's 1 person for every 20 square miles of real estate. Probably the circus was pretty stupid, taking a booking there, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Fezzik was alone. The loneliest place in the world. Just sitting there on a rock, watching the circus pull away. He was still sitting there the next day when Vicini the Sicilian found him. Vicini flattered him, promised to keep the booze away. Booze. Vicini needed Fezzik, but not half as much as Fezzik needed Vicini. As long as Vicini was around, the head of the man in black. What? I missed that. As long as Vicini was around, you couldn't be alone. Whatever Vicini said, Fezzik did. And if that meant crushing the head of the black man in black, so be it. but not by ambush, not the coward's way, nothing unsportsmanlike. His parents had always taught him to go by the rules. Fezzik stood in a shadow, the great rock tight in his great hand. He could hear the footsteps of the man in black coming nearer, nearer. Fezzik leaped from hiding and threw the rock with incredible power and perfect accuracy. It smashed into a boulder a foot away from the face of the man in black. "I did that on purpose," Fezzik said, then picking up another rock, holding it ready. "I didn't have to miss." "I believe you," the man in black said. They stood facing each other on the narrow mountain path. "Now what happens?" asked the man in black. "We face each other as God intended," Fezzik said. "No tricks, no weapons, skill against skill alone." "You mean you'll put down your rock and I'll put down my sword and we'll try to kill each other like civilized people? Is that it?" "If you'd rather, I can kill you now," Fezzik said gently, and he raised his rock to throw. "I'm giving you a chance." "So you are, and I accept it," said the man in black. He began to take off his sword and scabbard, although, frankly, I think the odds are slightly in your favor at hand fighting. "I tell you what I tell everybody," Fezzik explained. "I cannot help being the biggest and the strongest. It's not my fault." "I'm not blaming you," said the man in black. "Let's get to it then," Fezzik said, and he dropped his rock and got into fighting position, watching as the man in black slowly moved toward him. For a moment, Fezzik felt almost wistful. This was clearly a good fellow, even if he had killed an ego. He didn't complain or try and beg or bribe. He just accepted his fate. No complaining. Nothing like that. Obviously, a criminal of character. Was he criminal, though, Fezzik wondered? Surely the mask would indicate that. Or was it worse than that? Was he disfigured? His face burned away by acid, perhaps? Or perhaps born hideous? "Why do you wear a mask and hood?" Fezzik asked. "I think everybody will in the near future," was the man in black's reply. "They're terribly comfortable." They faced each other on the mountain path. There was a moment's pause. Then they engaged. Fezzik let the man in black fiddle around for a bit. He tested the man's strength, which was considerable for someone who wasn't a giant. He let the man in black feint and dodge and try a hold here and a hold there. Then, when he was quite sure the man in black would not go to his maker embarrassed, Fezzik locked his arms tight around. Fezzik lifted and squeezed and squeezed. Then he took the remains of the man in black, snapped him one way, snapped him the other, cracked him with one hand in the neck, with the other at the spine base, locked his legs up, rolled his limp arms around them, and tossed the entire bundle of what once had been a human into a nearby crevice. That was the theory, anyway. In fact, what happened was this. Fezzik lifted and squeezed, and the man in black slipped free. Thought Fezzik. That was certainly a surprise. I thought for sure I had him. "You're very quick," Fezzik complimented. "And a good thing, too," said the man in black. Then they engaged again. This time Fezzik did not give the man in black a chance to fiddle. He just grabbed him, swung him around his head once, twice, smashed his skull against the nearest boulder, pounded him, pummeled him, gave him a final squeeze for good measure, and tossed the remains of what had once been alive into a nearby crevice. Those were his intentions, anyway. In actuality, he never even got through the grabbing part with much success, because no sooner had Fezzik's great hands reached out than the man in black dropped and spun and twisted and was loose and free and still quite alive. "Don't understand a thing that's happening," Fezzik thought. "Could I be losing my strength? Could there be a mountain disease that takes your strength? There was a desert plague disease that took my parents' strength. That must be it. I must have caught a plague. But if that's it, why isn't he weak? No, I must still be strong. It has to be something else. Now, what could it be?" Suddenly he knew. He had not fought against one man in so long he had all but forgotten how. He had been fighting groups and gangs and bunches for so many years that the idea of having but a single opponent was slow in making itself known to him, because you fought them entirely differently. When there were 12 against you, you made certain moves, tried certain holds, acted in certain ways. But when there was but one, you had to completely readjust yourself. Quickly now, Fezzik went back through time. How had he fought the champion of Sandiki? He flashed through that fight in his mind, then reminded himself of all the other victories against other champions, the men from Isfar, Simal, Bolu, and Zile. He remembered fleeing Constantinople because he had beaten their champion so quickly, so easily. Yes, Fezzik thought, of course. And suddenly he had readjusted his style to what it had once been. But by that time, the man in black had him by the throat. And a picture! Oh my gosh, there's still no one on Instagram, and that is still okay. So here you are, YouTube. We have here Fezzik and the man in black. And I'll show it for YouTube because I might end up saving this stream. The man in black was riding him, and his arms were locked across Fezzik's winding pipe. One in front, one behind. Fezzik reached back, but the man in black was hard to grasp. Fezzik could not get his arms around to his back and dislodge the enemy. Fezzik ran at a boulder and, at the last moment, spun around so that the man in black received the main force of the charge. It was a terrible jolt. Fezzik knew it was. But the grip on his windpipe grew ever tighter. Fezzik charged the boulder again spun, and again he knew the power of the blow the man in black had taken. But still the grip remained. Fezzik clawed at the man in black's arms. He patted his giant fists against them. By now he had no air. Fezzik continued to struggle. He could feel a hollowness in his legs now. He could see the world beginning to pale, but he did not give up. He was the mighty Fezzik, lover of rhymes, and you did not give up, no matter what. Now the hollowness was in his arms, and the world was snowing. Fezzik went to his knees. He pounded still, but feebly. He fought still, but his blows would not have harmed a child. No air. There was no more air. There was no more anything. Not for Fezzik. Not in this world. I am beaten. I am going to die, he thought, just before he fell onto the mountain path. He was only half wrong. There is an instant between unconsciousness and death. And as the giant pitched onto the rocky path, that instant happened. And just before it happened, the man in black let go. He staggered to his feet and leaned against the boulder until he could walk. Fezzik lay sprawled, faintly breathing. The man in black looked around for a rope to secure the giant. Gave up the search almost as soon as he'd begun. What good were ropes against strength like his? He would simply snap them. The man in black made his way to where he had dropped his sword. He put it back on. 2 down, and the hardest one to go. Should we read Vicini, or should that be all for tonight? I will wait for a response. But while I wait for a response, I will drink some water, because I am in pain. Do you want to hear Vicini tonight? Or do you want to be done? Read. Okay. Vicini was waiting for him. Indeed, he had set out a little picnic spread from the knapsack that he always carried. He had taken a small handkerchief on it, and, oh my gosh, he had taken a small handkerchief, and on it he had placed 2 wine goblets. In the center was a small leather wine holder, and beside it, some cheese and some apples. The spot could not have been lovelier. A high point of the mountain path, with a splendid view all the way back to Florin Channel. Buttercup lay helpless beside the picnic, gagged and tied and blindfolded. Vicini held his long knife against her white throat. "Welcome," Vicini called when the man in black was almost upon them. The man in black stopped and surveyed the situation. "You've beaten my Turk," Vicini said. "It would seem so. And now it is down to you, and it is down to me. That would seem so, the man in black said, edging just a half step closer to the hunchback's long knife. With a smile, the hunchback pushed the knife harder against Buttercup's throat. It was about to bring blood. If you wish her dead, by all means, keep moving, Vicini said. The man in black froze. Better. Vicini nodded. No sound now beneath the moonlight. I understand completely what you are trying to do, the Sicilian said finally. And I want it quite clear that I resent your behavior. You are trying to kidnap what I have rightfully stolen, and I think it quite ungentlemanly. Let me explain, the man in black began, starting to edge forward. You're killing her, the Sicilian screamed, shoving harder with the knife. A drop of blood appeared now at Buttercup's throat, red against white. The man in black retreated. Let me explain, he said again, but from a distance. Again the hunchback interrupted. There is nothing you can tell me I do not already know. I have not the schooling equal to some, but for knowledge outside of books, there is none in the world close to mine. People say I read minds, but that is not, in all honesty, true. I merely predict the truth using logic and wisdom, and I say you are a kidnapper. Admit it. I admit that, as a ransom item, she has value, nothing more. We have a great picture of, I'm going to click Instagram because I'm probably going to save this. And then here we are. There is Vicini here and the man in black right here. You can tell because of his mask. And I'll say, as a quick side note, the man in black was entirely correct when he said that he thinks everyone in the future will be wearing masks. This is the Sicilian. This is Vicini speaking now, just in case. I have been instructed to do certain things to her. It is very important that I follow my instructions. If I do this properly, I will be in demand for life. And my instructions do not include ransom, they include death. So your explanations are meaningless. We cannot do business together. You wish to keep her alive for ransom. Whereas it is terribly important to me that she stop breathing in the very near future. Has it occurred to you that I have gone to great effort and expense, as well as personal sacrifice to reach this point? That if I fail now, I might get very angry. And if she stops breathing in the near future, it's entirely possible that you would catch the same fatal illness. I have no doubt you could kill me. Any man who can get by Inigo and Fezzik would have no trouble disposing of me. However, has it occurred to you that if you did that, then neither of us would get what we want? You having lost your ransom item, me, my life? We are at an impasse then, said the man in black. I fear so, said the Sicilian. I cannot compete with you physically, and you are no match for my brains. You are that smart. There are no words to contain all of my wisdom. I am so cunning, crafty, and clever, so filled with deceit and guile and, oh my gosh, chicanery. Such a knave, so shrewd, cagey, as well as calculating, as diabolical as I am vulpine, as tricky as I am untrustworthy. Well, I told you there are not words invented yet to explain how great my brain is, but let me put it this way. The world is several million years old, and several billion people have at one time or another tread upon it. But I, Vicini, the Sicilian, am speaking with pure candor and modesty. The slickest, sleekest, slyest, wiliest fellow who has yet to come down the pike. In that case, said the man in black, I challenge you to a battle of wits. Vicini had to smile. For the princess? You read my mind. It just seems that way, I told you. It is merely logic and wisdom. To the death? Correct again. I accept, cried Vicini. Begin the battle. Pour the wine, said the man in black. Vicini filled the 2 goblets with deep red liquid. The man in black pulled from his dark clothing a small packet and handed it to the hunchback. Open it and inhale, but be careful not to touch. Vicini took the packet and followed instructions. I smell nothing. The man in black took back the packet again. What you do not what you do not smell is called iocane powder. It is odorless, tasteless, and dissolves immediately in any kind of liquid. It also happens to be the deadliest poison known to man. Vicini was beginning to get excited. I don't suppose you'd hand me the goblet, said the man in black. Vicini shook his head. Take them yourself. My long knife does not leave her throat. The man in black reached down for the goblets. He took them and turned away. Vicini cackled aloud in anticipation. The man in black busied himself a long moment. Then he turned again with a goblet in each hand. Very carefully, he put the goblet in his right hand in front of Vicini. He put the goblet in his left hand across the kerchief from the hunchback. He sat down in front of the left-handed goblet and dropped the empty iocane packet by the cheese. Your guess, he said. Where is the poison? Guess, Vicini cried. I don't guess. I think. I ponder. I deduce. Then I decide. But I never guess. The battle of wits has begun, said the man in black. It ends when you decide, and we drink the wine and find out who is right and who is dead. We both drink, need I add, and swallow, naturally, at precisely the same time. It's all so simple, said the hunchback. All I have to do is deduce from what I know of you the way your mind works. Are you the kind of man who put the poison into his own glass or into the glass of his enemy? You're stalling, said the man in black. I'm relishing is what I'm doing, answered the Sicilian. No one has challenged my mind in years, and I love it. By the way, may I smell both goblets? Be my guest. Just be sure you put them down the same way you found them. The Sicilian sniffed his own glass. Then he reached across the kerchief for the goblet of the man in black and sniffed that. As you said, odorless. As I also said, you're stalling. The Sicilian smiled and stared at the wine goblets. Now, a great fool, he began, would place the poison in his own goblet, because he would know that only another great fool would reach for what he was given. I am clearly not a great fool, so I will clearly not reach for your wine. That's your final choice? No, because you knew I was not a great fool, so you would know that I would never fall for such a trick. You would count on it. So I will clearly not reach for mine either. Keep going, said the man in black. I intend to. The Sicilian reflected for a moment. We have now decided the poisoned cup is most likely in front of you. But the poison powder is made from iocane, and iocane comes only from Australia, and Australia, as everybody knows, is peopled with criminals, and criminals are used to having people not trust them, as I don't trust you. Which means I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. The man in black was starting to get nervous. But again, you must have suspected I knew the origins of iocane, so you would have known about the criminals and criminal behavior, and therefore I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me. Truly, you have a dizzying intellect, whispered the man in black. I'd like to mention here that is my favorite line in the movie. Okay. Well, one of my favorite lines, but that's a good one. Like, every single line in the movie is iconic. You have beaten my Turk, which means you are exceptionally strong, and exceptionally strong men are convinced they are too powerful ever to die, too powerful even for iocane poison. So you could have put it in your own cup, trusting on your strength to save you. Thus, I can clearly not choose the wine in front of you. I love this part. I love this part too, Lakin. Also, welcome. The man in black was very nervous now. But you also bested my Spaniard, which means you must have studied, because he studied many years for his excellence, and if you can study, you are clearly more than simply strong. You are aware of how mortal we all are, and you do not wish to die, so you would have kept the poison as far from yourself as possible. Therefore, I can clearly not choose the wine in front of me." "You are just trying to make me give something away with all this chatter," said the man in black angrily. "Well, it won't work. You'll learn nothing from me, that I promise you." "I have already learned everything from you," said the Sicilian. "I know where the poison is." "Only a genius could have deduced as much." "How fortunate for me that I happen to be one," said the hunchback, growing more amused now. "You cannot frighten me," said the man in black, but there was fear all through his voice. "Shall we drink, then? Pick, choose, quit dragging it out. You don't know, you couldn't know." The Sicilian only smiled at the outburst. Then a strange look crossed his features, and he pointed off behind the man in black. "What in the world can that be?" he asked. The man in black turned around and looked. "I don't see anything. Oh, well, I could have sworn I saw something." "No matter." The Sicilian began to laugh. "I don't understand. What's so funny?" said the man in black. "Tell you in a minute," said the hunchback. "But first, let's drink." And he picked up his own wine goblet. The man in black picked up the one in front of him. They drank. "You guessed wrong," said the man in black. "You only think I guessed wrong," said the Sicilian, his laughter ringing louder. "That's what's so funny. I switched glasses when your back was turned." There was nothing for the man in black to say. "Fool!" cried the hunchback. "You fell victim to one of the classic blunders. The most famous is, never get involved in a land war in Asia. But only slightly less well known is this: never go against a Sicilian when death is on the line." He was quite cheery until the iocane powder took effect. The man in black stepped quickly over the corpse, but then roughly ripped the blindfold from the princess's eyes. "I heard everything that happened," Buttercup began, and then she said, "Oh," because she had never been next to a dead man before. "You killed him," she whispered finally. "I let him die laughing," said the man in black. "Pray I do as much for you." He lifted her, slashed her bonds away, put her on her feet, and started pulling her along. "Please," Buttercup said, "give me a moment to gather myself." The man in black released his grip. Buttercup rubbed her wrist, stopped, massaged her ankles. She took a final look at the Sicilian. "To think," she murmured. "All that time it was your cup that was poisoned." "They were both poisoned," said the man in black. "I spent the last 2 years building up an immunity to iocane powder." Buttercup looked at him. He was terrifying to her, masked and hooded and dangerous. His voice was strained, rough. "Who are you?" she asked. "I am no one to be trifled with," replied the man in black. "That's all you ever need to know." And with that, he yanked her upright. "You've had your moment." Again he pulled her after him, and this time she could do nothing but follow. And I have a picture to show you. That's my favorite part of the movie. Oh my gosh, it is honestly probably the best part of the movie. So I completely like the beginning, the intro. I also like, can I this Fezzik and Inigo are wonderful, wonderful characters. Here is a picture of the man in black pulling Wesley's hand. And here you go. We have a picture. One of these days, I'm going to get a picture book, and I'm going to be a lot closer to the camera, so I'll just like read like this to you guys, and it'll be great. But today is not that day. They moved along the mountain path. The moonlight was very bright, and there were rocks everywhere, and to Buttercup, it all looked dead and yellow, like the moon. She had just spent several hours with 3 men who were openly planning to kill her. So why, she wondered, was she more frightened now than then? Who was the horrid hooded figure to strike fear in her so? What could be worse than dying? "I will pay you a great deal of money to release me," she managed to say. The man in black glanced at her. "You are rich, then?" "I will be," Buttercup said. "Whatever you want for ransom, I promise I'll get it for you if you'll let me go." The man in black just laughed. "I was not speaking in jest. You promise? You? I should release you on your promise?" What is that worth, the vow of a woman? Oh, that is very funny, Highness, spoken in jest or not. They proceeded along the mountain path to an open space. The man in black stopped then. There were a million stars fighting for prominence, and for a moment he seemed to be intent on nothing less than studying them all. As Buttercup watched his eyes flick from constellation to constellation behind his mask. Then, with no warning, he spun off the path, heading into wild terrain, pulling her behind him. She stumbled. She pulled her to her feet again. Again she fell. Again he righted her. I cannot move this quickly. You can and you will, or you will suffer greatly. Do you think I could make you suffer greatly? Buttercup nodded. Then run, cried the man in black, and he broke off into a run himself, flying across the rocks in the moonlight, pulling the princess behind him. She did her best to keep up. She was frightened as to what he would do to her, so she dared not fall again. After 5 minutes, the man in black stopped dead. Catch your breath, he commanded. Buttercup nodded, gasped in air, tried to quiet her heart. But then they were off again, with no warning, dashing across the mountain. Okay, funny story about this word. I pronounced it wrong a couple of years ago, and now I don't remember what is the right way to pronounce it. So I think it's mountainous terrain, heading. Where do you take me? Buttercup gasped when again he gave her a chance to rest. Surely even someone as arrogant as you cannot expect to give an answer. Me cannot expect me to give an answer. That's why that sentence didn't make sense. It does not matter if you tell or not. He will find you. He, Highness? Prince Humperdinck. There is no greater hunter. He can track a falcon on a cloudy day. He can find you. You have confidence that your dearest love will save you, do you? I never said he was my dearest love. And yes, he will save me. That I know. You admit you do not love your husband-to-be. Fancy, an honest woman. You are a rare specimen, Highness. The prince and I have never, from the beginning, lied to each other. He knows I do not love him. Are not capable of love, is what you mean. I am very capable of love, Buttercup said. Hold your tongue, I think. I have loved more deeply than a killer like you can possibly imagine. He slapped her. That is the penalty for lying, Highness. Where I come from, when a woman lies, she is reprimanded. But I spoke the truth. I did. Buttercup saw his hand rise the second time, so she stopped quickly, fell dead silent. They began to run again. They did not speak for hours. They just ran. And then, as if he could guess when she was silent, he would stop, release her hand. She would try to catch her breath for the next dash she was sure would come. Without a sound, he would grab her, and off they would go. And I need some water. How's everyone doing while I'm drinking water? You don't have to tell me, but just check in with yourself. Okay. It was close to dawn when they first saw the Armada. They were running along the edge of a towering ravine. They seemed almost to be at the top of the world. When they stopped, Buttercup sank down to rest. The man in black stood silently over her. Your love comes, not alone, he said then. Buttercup did not understand. Pretty good. That's pretty good, John. Good. Classes start tomorrow. For what college? I'll keep reading, but for what college for you, Lincoln? Your love comes not alone, he said then. Buttercup did not understand. The man in black pointed back the way they had come. Buttercup stared, and as she did, the waters of Florin Channel seemed as filled with light as the sky was filled with stars. He must have ordered every ship in Florin after you, the man in black said. Such a sight I have never seen. He stared at all the lanterns on the ships as they moved. You could never escape him. Lawrence University. I've never heard of Lawrence University, but I hope you have fun. And I was pretty stressed before my first day. And so I hope you'll find that it's not as stressful as maybe it feels like it might be. I hope you have fun as well. I don't know what classes you're taking. You can tell me if you'd like. Such a sight I have never seen. He stared at all the lanterns and all the ships as they moved. You can never escape him, Buttercup said. If you release me, I promise that you will come to no harm. You are much too generous. I could never accept such an offer. I offered you your life. That was generous enough. Highness, said the man in black, and his hands were suddenly at her throat. If there is talk of life to be done, let me do it. Imagine being in college. Could not be me. Honestly, that is a mood. Except the only problem is I am in college. Thanks, me too. You would not kill me. You did not steal me from murderers to murder me yourself. Wise as well as loving, said the man in black. He jerked her to her feet, and they ran along the edge of the great ravine. It was hundreds of feet deep, and filled with rocks and trees and lifting shadows. Abruptly, the man in black stopped, stared back at the armada. To be honest, he said, I had not expected quite so many. You can never predict my prince. That is why he is the greatest hunter. I wonder, said the man in black, will he stay in one group, or will he divide? Some to search the coastline, some to follow your path on land. What do you think? I only know that he will find me, and if you have not given me my freedom first, he will not treat you gently. Surely he must have discussed things with you, the thrill of the hunt. What has he done in the past with many ships? We do not discuss hunting, that I can assure you. Not hunting, not love. What do you talk about? We do not see all that much of each other. Tender couple. Buttercup could feel the upset coming. We are always very honest with each other. Not everyone can say as much. May I please tell you something, Highness? You're very cold. I'm not. Very cold and very young, and if you live, I think you'll turn into a hoarfrost. Why do you pick at me? I have come to terms with my life, and that is my affair. I am not cold, I swear, but I have decided certain things. It is best for me to ignore emotion. I have not been happy dealing with it. Her heart was a secret garden, and the walls were very high. I loved once, Buttercup said after a moment. It worked out badly. Another rich man? Yes, and he left you for a richer woman. No. Poor. Poor, and it killed him. Were you sorry? Did you feel pain? Admit that you felt nothing. Do not mock my grief. I died that day. The armada began to fire signal cannons. The explosions echoed through the mountains. The man in black stared as the ships began to change formation. But while he was watching the ships, Buttercup shoved him with all her strength remaining. For a moment, the man in black teetered at the ravine edge. His arms spun like windmills fighting for balance. They swung and gripped the air, and then he began his slide. Down went the man in black, stumbling, then torn, reaching out to stop his descent. But the ravine was too steep, and nothing could be done. Down, down, rolling over rocks, spinning, out of all control. Buttercup stared at what she had done. Finally, he rested far below her, silent and without motion. You can die too, for all I care, she said, and then she turned away. Words followed her, whispered from afar, weak and warm and familiar. As you wish. Dawn in the mountains. Buttercup turned to the source of the sound and stared down as, in first light, the man in black struggled to remove his mask. Oh, my sweet Wesley, Buttercup said, what have I done to you now? From the bottom of the ravine there came only silence. Buttercup hesitated not a moment. Down she went after him, keeping her feet as best she could, and as she began, she thought she heard him crying out to her over and over, but she could not make sense of his words. because inside her now there was the thunder of walls crumbling. That was noise enough. Besides, her balance quickly was gone, and the ravine had her. She fell fast, and she fell hard. But what did that matter, since she would have gladly dropped 1,000 feet onto a bed of nails if Wesley had been waiting at the bottom. Down, down. And here we have a picture of good old Wesley, not Wesley, Buttercup, and Wesley's mask. See Buttercup and mask. Now you can see too. Here's Buttercup. Here's mask. Not gonna lie, he was being real. Honestly, no. You know what? But I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about why he was so mean to her. And I think it was because he was legitimately upset with her because she is getting married to another guy. I think that's why he did it. Because that seems like a completely reasonable thing to do. Because they promise, like, I'll always, find you. But then he gets news that she's dead. And so she's like, okay, well, life kind of sucks now. There's nothing else to do. So now all I'm going to do is just give up. So she marries this other guy. And Wesley is pissed. So that's what I think happened. So this is part of his anger. But I think their conversation and the pushing kind of did the trick. Yes, I see. Hi, William. You don't know the context. Or maybe you do. I was talking about why Wesley was treating Buttercup so badly when he took her from Vicini and the others. Because he was really mean to her. But, like, he loved her, so that was it. Anyways. Buttercup had just thrown herself down the ravine after it was revealed that the guy who had abducted her was Wesley. Tossed and spinning, crashing, torn, out of all control, she rolled and twisted and plunged, cartwheeling towards what was left of her beloved. From his position at the point of the Armada, Prince Humperdinck stared up at the cliffs of insanity. This was just like any other hunt. He made himself think away the quarry. It did not matter if you were after an antelope or a bride-to-be. The procedures held. You gathered evidence, then you acted. You studied, then you performed. If you studied too little, the chances were strong that your actions would also be too late. You had to take time. And so, have fun. I'm going to sleep now. Thanks for the 10 seconds of a bedtime story. Thank you for joining me for the 10 seconds that you joined me for. I hope you sleep well and have a good day tomorrow. You had to take time, and so, frozen in thought, he continued to stare up at the sheer face of the cliffs. Obviously, someone had recently climbed them. There were foot scratchings all up the way up a straight line, which meant, most certainly, a rope. An arm-over-arm climb up to a 1,000-foot rope, with occasional foot kicks for balance. To make such a climb required both strength and planning, so the prince made those marks in his brain. My enemy is strong. My enemy is not impulsive. Now his eyes reached a point perhaps 300 feet from the top. Here began to get interesting. Now the foot scratchings were deeper, more frequent, and they followed no direct ascending line. Either someone left their rope 300 feet from the top intentionally, which made no sense, or the rope was cut, while that someone was still 300 feet from safety. I need to take a break. For clearly this was the last part of the climb, was made up the rock. What? Okay. For clearly this last part of the climb was made up the rock face itself. But who had such talent? And why had he been called to exercise it at such a deadly time? 700 feet above disaster. 7 feet above disaster. I must examine the tops of the cliffs of insanity, the prince said, without bothering to turn. From behind him, Count Rugen only said, done, and awaited further instructions. Send half the Armada south along the coastline to the other north. They should meet by twilight near the fire swamp. Our ship will sail to the first landing possibility, and you will follow me with your soldiers. Ready the whites." Count Rugen signaled the cannoneer, and the prince's instructions boomed along the cliffs. Within minutes, the armada had begun to split, with only the prince's giant ship sailing alone into the coastline, looking for a landing possibility. "There," the prince ordered some time later, and his ship began maneuvering into the cove for a safe place to anchor. That took time, but not much, because the captain was skilled and, more than that, the prince was quick to lose patience, and no one dared risk that. Humperdinck jumped from ship to shore. A plank was lowered, and the whites were led to ground. Of all of his accomplishment, none pleased the prince as did these horses. Someday he would have an army of them, but getting the bloodlines perfect was a slow business. Yeah, he now had 4 whites, and they were identical. Snowy, tireless giants. 20 hands high. On flat land nothing could catch them, and even on hills and rocky terrain there was nothing short of Araby to close their equal. The prince, when he rode 4 bareback, the only way he ever rode, riding 1, leading 3, changing beasts in mid-stride so that no single animal had to bear his bulk to the tiring point. Now, since I've discussed so much this one stream, I'd also like to discuss this, because in the movie, Prince Humperdinck is not portrayed as he was written in the book. In the book, he's a big, strong boy. In the movie, he is, you know that guy from Netflix's You, like the main character, who's like an awful, terrible human being, but looks like he's not? Yeah, that's Prince Humperdinck in the movie. And he has a completely different attitude. Like, this whole 4 white horses to carry the bulk of his weight doesn't exist in the movie, which I find disappointing, but I still respect the movie. Now he mounted and was gone. It took him considerably less than an hour to reach the edge of the cliffs of insanity. He dismounted, went to his knees, commenced his study of the terrain. There had been a rope tied around a giant oak. The bark of the base was broken and scraped. So probably whoever first reached the top untied the rope, and whoever was on the rope at that moment was 300 feet from the peak and somehow survived the climb. Excuse me. A great jumble of footprints caused him trouble. It was hard to ascertain what had gone on. Perhaps a conference, because 2 sets of footprints seemed to lead off, while 1 remained pacing the cliff edge. Then there were 2 on the cliff edge. Humperdinck examined the prints until he was certain of 2 things. 1. A fencing match had taken place. 2. The combatants were both masters. The strength, the stride length, the quickness of the foot feints, all clearly revealed to his unfailing eye, made him reassess his second conclusion. They were at least masters, probably better. Then he closed his eyes and concentrated on smelling out the blood. Surely, in a match of such furiosity, blood must have been spilled. Now it was a matter of gazing his entire body over to his sense of smell. The prince had worked at this for many years, ever since a wounded tigress had surprised him from a tree limb while he was tracking. I have a picture. It is not much, but it is a picture of what we assume to be Humperdinck holding the reins of a horse. Hi, Instagram. Well, I like it. I like it. Okay. The prince had worked with this for many years, ever since a wounded tigress had surprised him from a tree limb while he was tracking her. He had let his eyes follow the blood hunt then, and it almost killed him. Now, he trusted only his olfactories. If there was blood within 100 yards, he would find it. He opened his eyes, moved without hesitation toward a group of large boulders until he found the blood drops. There were a few of them, and they were dry, but less than 3 hours old. Humperdinck smiled. When you had the whites under you, 3 hours was a finger snap. He retraced the duel then, for it confused him. It seemed to range from the cliff edge and back, then returned to the cliff edge. Sometimes the left foot seemed to be leading, sometimes the right, which made no logical sense at all. Clearly, the swordsmen were changing hands, but why would a master do that, unless his good arm was wounded to the point of uselessness? And that clearly had not happened, because a wound of that depth would have left blood spores, and there was simply not enough blood in the area to indicate that. Strange, strange. Humperdinck continued his wanderings. Stranger still, the battle could not have ended in death. He knelt by the outline of a body. Clearly a man had laid there unconscious, but again, no blood. There was a mighty duel, Prince Humperdinck said, directing his comment towards Count Rugen, who had finally caught up together with a contingent of 100 mounted men-at-arms. My guess would be, and for a moment the prince paused, following footsteps, would be that whoever fell here ran off there. He pointed one way. Whoever was the victor ran off along the mountain path in almost precisely the opposite direction. It is also my opinion that the victor was following the path taken by the princess. Shall we follow them both? The count asked. I think not, Prince Humperdinck replied. Whoever is gone is of minimal importance, since whoever has the princess is the whoever we're after. Because we don't know the nature of the trap we might be getting led into, we need all of the arms we have in one band. Clearly, this has been planned by countrymen of Gilder. Nothing must ever be put past them. You think this is a trap, then? I always think everything's a trap, until proven otherwise, the prince answered, which is why I am still alive. And with that, he was back aboard a white and galloping. When he reached the mountain path where the hand fight happened, the prince did not even bother dismounting. Everything that could be seen was quite visible from horseback. Someone has beaten a giant, he said, when the count was close enough. The giant has run away, do you see? The count, of course, saw nothing but rock and mountain path. I would not think to doubt you. And look there, cried the prince, because now he saw for the first time, in the rubble of the mountain path, the footsteps of a woman. The princess is alive! And again the whites were thundering across the mountain. When the count caught up with him again, the prince was kneeling over the still body of a hunchback. The count dismounted. Smell this, the prince said, and he handed up a goblet. Nothing, the count said. No odor at all. Iocane, the prince replied. I would bet my life on it. I know of nothing else that kills so silently. He stood up then. The princess was still alive. Her footprints followed the path. He shouted at the 100 mounted men. There will be a great suffering in Gilder if she dies. On foot now, he ran along the mountain path, following the footsteps that he alone could see. And when the footsteps led the path for wilder terrain, he followed still, strung up behind him the count, and all the soldiers did their best to keep up. Men stumbled, horses fell, even the count tripped from time to time. Prince Humperdinck never even broke stride. He ran steadily, mechanically, his barrel legs pumping like a metronome. It was 2 hours after dawn when he reached the steep ravine. Odd, he said to the count, who was tiring badly. The count continued only to breathe deeply. 2 bodies fell to the bottom, and they did not come back up. That is odd, the count managed. No, that isn't what's odd, the prince corrected. Clearly, the kidnapper did not want to come back up because the climb was too steep, and our cannons must have let him know that they were closely pursued. His decision, which I applaud, was to make better time running along the ravine floor. The count waited for the prince to continue. It's just odd that a man who was a master fencer, a defeater of giants, an expert in the use of iocane powder, would not know what this ravine opens into. And what is that? Asked the count. The fire swamp, said Prince Humperdinck. Then we have him, said the count. Precisely so. It was a well-documented trait of his to smile only just before the kill. His smile was very much in evidence now. Wesley, indeed, had not the least idea he was racing dead into the fire swamp. He knew only once Buttercup was down at the ravine bottom beside him, that to climb out would take, as Prince Humperdinck had assumed, too much time. Wesley noted only that the ravine bottom was flat rock, heading in the general direction he wanted to follow, so he and Buttercup fled along, both of them very much aware of the gigantic forces that were following them, and, undoubtedly, cutting into their lead. The ravine grew increasingly sheer as they went along, and Wesley soon realized that whereas once he probably could have helped her through the climb, there was simply no way of doing so. He had made his choice, and there was no changing possible. Wherever the ravine led was their destination, and that quite simply was that. At this point in the story, I'm just going to read this because I don't understand. At this point in the story, my wife wants it known that she feels violently cheated, not being allowed the scene of reconciliation on the ravine floor between lovers. My reply to her, okay, so this is another part in the book where it is the fake author of The Princess and the Bride in the book telling us it's supposed to be some person just reading the book, and it was that last sentence was by the fake author of the book inside the book, and now this is just the guy reading the book that the other guy wrote, which is now probably at this point literally just the author of this entire thing, which I'm going to skip because this is not something that is needed for the narrative of the story. For the book, it is great. Read the book. Read all the little inserts. It's very, very funny, but not for right now. We can skip all this. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to read this part. At this point in the story, my wife wants it known that she feels violently cheated, not being allowed the scene of reconciliation on the ravine floor between the lovers. My reply to her is simply this. Each of God's beings, from the lowliest on up, is entitled to at least a few moments of genuine privacy. What actually was spoken, while moving enough to those involved at the actual time, flattens like toothpaste when transferred to paper for later reading. My dove, my only, bliss, etc. But that was like A, point B, point C. Nothing of importance in an expositionary way was related, because every time Buttercup began, tell me about yourself, Wesley quickly cut her off with, later, beloved, now is not the time. However, it should be noticed, in fairness to all that, 1, he did weep. 2, her eyes did not remain precisely dry. 3, there was more than one embrace. And 4, both parties admitted that, without any qualifications whatsoever, they were more than a little glad to see each other. Besides, 5, within a quarter of an hour, they were arguing. It began quite innocently, the two of them kneeling, facing each other, Wesley holding her perfect face in his quick hands. When I left you, he was to dream. In our years apart, my imaginings did their best to improve on your perfection. At nights, your face was forever behind my eyes. And now I see that the vision that kept me of company in my loneliness was a hag, compared to the beauty now before me. Enough about my beauty, Buttercup said. Everybody always talks about how beautiful I am. I've got a mind. Wesley, talk about that. Okay, that should be it. Throughout eternity, I shall do that very thing, he told her, but now we haven't time. He made it to his feet. The ravine fall had shaken and battered him, but all his bones survived the trip uncracked. He helped her to her feet. Wesley, Buttercup said then, just before I started down after you while I was still up there. I could hear you saying something, but the words were indistinct. I've forgotten whatever it was. Terrible liar. He smiled at her and kissed her cheek. It's not important, believe me. The past has a way of being past. We must not begin with secrets from each other. She meant it. You could tell that. Trust me, he tried. I do. So tell me your words, or I shall be given reason not to. Wesley sighed. But I was trying to get through to you, my beloved sweet. But I was, as a matter of accurate fact, shouting with everything I had left was, whatever you do, stay up there, don't come down here, please. You didn't want to see me. Of course I wanted to see you, I just didn't want to see you down here. Why not? Because now, my precious, we're more or less kind of trapped. I can't climb out of here and bring you with me without it taking all day. I can get myself out, most likely, without it taking all day. But with the addition of your lovely bulk, it is not about to happen. Nonsense. You climbed the cliffs of insanity, and this is nearly that steep. And it took a little out of me, too, let me tell you. And after a little effort, I tangled with a fella who knew a little something about fencing. And after that, spent a few happy moments grappling with the giant. And after that, I had to outfake a Sicilian to death when any mistake meant that it was a knife in the throat for you. And after that, I'd run my lungs out a couple hours. And after that, I was pushed 200 feet down a rock ravine. I'm tired, Buttercup. Do you understand tired? I've put in a night is what I'm trying to get through to you. I'm not stupid, you know. The bird clock. I know. I mean, yeah, I'll, next time I do this, I'll try to see if I can get batteries in the clock. It's 11, and so I'm just about to wrap up, but I'll finish this so you don't end on a weird note, but then I'm done. I'm not stupid, you know. Quit bragging. Stop being rude. When was the last time you read a book? The truth now, and picture books don't count. I mean, with something with print from it in it. Buttercup walked away from him. There's other things to read than print, she said. And the Princess of Hammersmith is displeased with you, and is thinking seriously of going home. No more words, she whirled into his arms then, saying, Oh, Wesley, I didn't mean that. I didn't. I did not a single syllabub. That's what it says. It says syllabub of it. Now Wesley knew what she meant to say. Not a single syllable of it. Because a syllabub was something you ate, with cream and wine mixed in it together to form the base. But he also knew an apology when he heard one. So he held her very close, and shut his loving eyes, and only whispered, I knew it was false, believe me. Every single syllable. And that out of the way, they started running as fast as they could along the flat rock floor of the ravine. And that will be the end of our read today. I read for 2 hours, which I must say, I can't believe I have read out loud for 2 hours. I have spoken out loud without rest for 2 hours. I feel like a teacher, because that's basically what they do. Except I don't feel like a teacher because I don't feel like I'm teaching anything. I'm just reading to you guys, which I am very much enjoying. I'm going to delete this Instagram video. So now that we're done for tonight, someone just joined the YouTube live stream and I'm literally ending. But, so now that we're done, I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I hope you all enjoyed the read. Maybe next time I'll have some music going on in the background for some like ambiance, like that, some of that like this music will make you fall asleep type stuff. But I'll try to figure that out, and also maybe because Kai asked if I could stream to Twitch, so I'll also try to figure that out maybe if I feel like it. Anyways, the next stream probably won't be tomorrow. I have ballet, and I'll probably be really tired. It might happen on Tuesday. I do have ballet that day, but it ends earlier. Wednesday might be the best bet. But of course, I'll be letting all of you know beforehand. So thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for sticking around. Thanks for chatting with me while I was reading. I really enjoy reading the book to you guys. And last time I read this, I was in 8th grade. And if I'm correct, It's been at least 4 years since then. So it's been a bit of a time since I've last read this book. I'm having a great time reading it. I swear to you, I am. I really do enjoy it. And I hope you guys enjoy it. And I will see you next time. I hope you all sleep well. Hope you brushed your teeth. I hope you flossed. Did you floss? I hope you flossed. Okay. Drink water, use the bathroom, whatever. Get ready for bed. If you have anything you're worrying about, make a list, keep it by your bed. Worry about it tomorrow. Go to sleep. You deserve sleep. Get some rest. Hope you all have a wonderful day tomorrow. I hope you all have wonderful dreams, and if no dreams, then I just hope you feel rested. Thank you for joining me. See you next time.